Hi, my name is Seneca Johnson. For my topic regarding profiles and gender, I wanted to discuss someone who I consider a real sense of inspiration for me, women, and everyone in general. I have chosen to discuss the role that Ronda Rousey has had and continues to have on the world of sports. Rousey is a trailblazer constructing a path for women like me to fight alongside the men, both literally and metaphorically. Rousey was around the age of 11 when she started to learn the art of judo. At the 2008 Olympics, at 21 years old, Ronda Rousey had mastered the art of judo, earning herself a bronze medal. And after her impressive win, she decided to retire from judo and move on to the sport of mixed martial arts. She first competed as an amateur, and then she moved on to fighting in the mixed martial arts company Strikeforce. Many people might not be familiar of the organization of Strikeforce because it's a smaller mixed martial arts organization as compared to the UFC. However, Rousey wasn't permitted to fight in the UFC, despite her dominant athletic prowess. Back in 2011, when asked by TMZ Sports when women were going to be able to fight in the UFC majority owner Dana White simply stated, never. But clearly that's not the case, as now Ronda Rousey is now known primarily through her work in the UFC. So what changed White's mind? Very simple. It was Ronda Rousey herself who proved that women belong in the UFC just as much as the men, which is why in 2012 she became the first woman to sign with the UFC. In an interview with #Sports, White apologized for his controversial comments, admitting that he had to start signing women because they were just as good, if some being better, than the men. He even admitted that he needed to put his own chauvinistic attitude aside, believing that women couldn't fight alongside men, when in reality they possess just as much of a fighting spirit as men. Rousey proved herself to be the most valuable asset in the UFC for 4 years straight, and as she was the biggest draw, the highest paid athlete, and remained undefeated for 4 years. But the old saying is true, nothing lasts forever. Rousey did end up losing her winning streak and ultimately ended up retiring from the UFC in 2016. However, her impact is not to be forgotten nor forsaken, as she opened the door for many women in the UFC. In 2018, after making multiple appearances in the WWE, she finally signed as a performer for the WWE. WWE is quite interesting, to say the least. It was previously referred to as the WWF, which many people still refer to because that's what they grew up on, World Wrestling Federation. But the chairman, Vince McMahon, he always wanted wrestling to be more than just a sport. He wanted it to be sports entertainment. He wanted athletic ability with storytelling tactics. At the same time, I don't think anyone can deny that wrestlers are athletes, and they use their bodies not just to show off their athletic prowess, but also to entertain crowds and tell stories around them. And that explains why Ronda has always loved the art of wrestling. She loved wrestling even since she was a kid. Before she started judo, even she loved WWE, or at the time WWF. Because WWE requires just as much athletic ability as the UFC, but it also has the ability to tell a story with wrestling skills and promo packages. And Rousey also loved being in WWE because it gave her a bigger platform to promote her messages of female empowerment. Now, as you probably saw from my past discussion posts, I could talk about WWE all day long. I can even spend a whole day talking about Ronda Rousey's brief stint in WWE. She was only there for about a year, but she put in just as high as numbers, bringing in crowds in WWE just as she did in UFC, and her paycheck reflected that notion. And she continued to trailblaze for women in sports world, being one of the three women to headline the first of being one of the three women to headline WrestleMania as the first women act. Which is WrestleMania is WWE's biggest event of the year. So through her years in sports, judo, UFC, WWE, Ronda Rousey broke so many barriers, opened people's eyes to the simple fact that women are just as tough as men and deserve the same amount of respect. One could argue that Rousey being physically beautiful got her farther in most places in opening doors than other women, or that the fact that all of her sports, judo, UFC, WWE, does not have a lot of diversity, and the fact that most of the women in those sports are white. But I think that Ronda is still a big source of inspiration because she's not strong just for herself, but just for her fellow women. And if we can all just take a page from Ronda Rousey, I think we can all look to inspire each other and fight and just be awesome. So that is exactly why Ronda Rousey to me is the essence of a dominant woman in the sports world.